Hi, I'm Ben. Welcome to my book corner. This is my reading wrap-up for January of 2026. Bit of a weird month in terms of reading. I blasted through 6 of the books at the start of the month and then didn't really read much for a couple of weeks and I've sort of binged the last few days of January to get through my other 2 books that I've read. So in total, we do have 8 books that I've read this month, 2 of which were audiobooks. One was a physical, one was a graphic novel / comic, and the remaining 4 were all ebooks that I received as ARC reads. So, without further ado, I'm going to go through this in order of when I finished them. So let's dive into our first book. First off, we have the first ARC of the month, and this is my book of the month as well. Blessed is the Rot by Sheri Singerling. This is from the Alfam shared universe of books. This is the first book in a trilogy within that universe. This did release on January the 13th of this year. It's available in Kindle as well as hardback and paperback, the Kindle edition coming in at 303 pages. This gives me Matrix vibes in many, many ways. You have a dystopian world where the general human populace are ruled over by a quasi-religious caste. Well, I say quasi-religious, they are the church. Our main character, well, there's a number of POV characters in here. Fenrir has a hidden past with the church and now works as a bell toller, tolling the bells at certain points of day so everyone stops and takes part in their religious practices, which seems to be writing out mathematical equations, which is interesting in itself. You then have the introduction of Sophie, who is a church surveyor with a secret of their own. A surveyor is someone who goes out and assesses and contains threats from anomalies which exist within the world. You have the church itself as well, which is directly linked to the anomalies. And as we work through the book, as we discover more of the past of these 2 characters, and also the fact that Sophie is engaged to be married to a high-ranking member of the church, they are sent off on a secret mission to retrieve something from the old world. This appears to be set in the UK after technology's gone wrong. It's unclear whether this is real world or simulation. That is not answered in here. I'm really curious to see where that goes. There's a couple of romance elements in here. You do have some well-worn tropes around religious corruption and mistruths going on as well. It's a fascinating dark world, and the idea of maths as a basis for religion is a really interesting one, especially with the other themes that are going on in here. So I gave this 4.25 stars out of 5. That's the first book for the month. It's Blessed is the Rot by Sheri Singerling. Next up, we have another ARC. This one I requested directly from the author. This is Without a Whisper, which is Song 2 of the Tangled Elegies duology by Macabre. So this is a follow-up to Dark Bloom, which I reviewed back in July. Link to that review above. And this follows on the story of Kate and Nick in a world where basically there's been a zombie infection and the world's fighting to survive. This has far more of a focus on the evils of humanity rather than the zombies themselves. This doesn't answer too many of the questions that book 1 asked in many ways, and this totally does feel very different. You have the growing relationship between Kate and Nick as they get closer and closer to each other. You also have the doubts that are being caused by how harsh and how unforgiving the world is, and we very much see humanity at its worst as Kate and Nick decide to go and try and find safety behind the walls of Fort Vanguard, which appears to be the remnants of a military base that is trying to eke out some civilization in this insane world. There are some fascinating little bits and pieces in here around the world in general and the zombies themselves. This does not provide a hopeful view of what would happen if the world fell apart, which it feels like it is doing at the moment in general. Overall, this was a very solid follow-up to Dark Bloom. I prefer Dark Bloom because of its focus on zombies. That's a sentence I never thought I'd say because I'm not a massive fan of zombies. But I will say as well, the ending of this is a real gut punch, and this is the second book in a row where Molly has gut punched me with an ending to one of her books. This releases on February the 1st. I believe it is just initially at least going to be on Kindle. So I'm not sure if this is getting a physical release. I suspect it will do. But I gave this a 3.75 stars out of 5. Next on the list is the graphic novel / comic. This is Transformers Volume 3, Combine a Chaos, and this is from Daniel Warren Johnson with illustrations by George Corona, Jason Howard, Ryan Otley, and Mike Spicer. And I think this is my least favourite of the 3 Transformers Energon... what's the word I'm looking for? Omnibus? No. Next up, we have the graphic novel / comic. This is Transformers Volume 3, Combine at Chaos. So this is a collection of episodes 13 to 18 of the Transformers Energon universe from 2024. And this is by Daniel Warren Johnson, George Corona, Jason Howard, Ryan Otley, and Mike Spicer. This is maybe my least favourite of the Transformers-focused comics within the Energon universe so far. It very much feels like this is a setting up episode of the series. We do have the introduction of the Combiners. We do have the continued kind of fall into insanity and corruption of Optimus Prime as well. We have the return of Megatron in here in all his gruesome glory, and straight off the bat, this does, with the ending of this, show just how much of a threat, even in his diminished state, Megatron really is, almost like the Legend of Chaos that he really is. But it felt like I was missing something in here. It felt like there was little points missing. I do wonder if that's because I'm kind of reading for the Transformers on its own, and it feels like I should have probably read some of the other Energon universe comics alongside it, because I know there's G.I. Joe versions, there's the Void Rivals ones as well. So it feels like I'm missing certain little bits in here, and that sort of took a little bit of my enjoyment away, but it was still really, really good. I still absolutely adore the artwork. It is stunning and gruesome. I gave this a 3.5 stars out of 5. I'm still going to pick up Volume 4 at some point, but this one didn't hit quite as hard as the other two, not gonna lie. Next up, we have an audiobook, and when does TikTok ever lead me astray when it comes to reading? Well, almost here. Lights Out, Book 1 in the Into Darkness series by Navessa Allen is up next. This has been all over TikTok. I have heard a fair few outtakes of this before I picked up the book to listen to, and kind of feel like I heard the best of it on TikTok, not gonna lie. It's a book of 2 halves. The first half was aggressively fine, but it felt like it was spinning its wheels a lot. There was a lot of time with our characters, Ali, who is a trauma nurse, and Josh, who is a rich stalker with a serial killer dad. We spent a lot of time in their own heads, as you sort of had this cat and mouse game. Initially, as one tried to figure out who the other was, and one was chasing after the other. It was fine. It's incredibly problematic, and I don't get this side of dark romance at all, but it's not aimed at me. So that's fine. Now, it did get better in the back half as an actual kind of story got introduced. Kind of. You still had very much the cat and mouse, but once they realised who each other were, it got better. I will say a lot of this is sold by the amazing narration by Elena Wolfe and Jacob Morgan. They both did an amazingly good job with the narration for this. This is one, definitely check your content warnings for this. This is incredibly spicy. A lot of stuff goes on here. Some of it is a little bit unhygienic, not gonna lie. This would have got 2 stars if it carried on like the first half of the book, which just bored me to tears. Second half got better. Overall, this gets a 3.25 stars out of 5 from me. I will not be carrying on this series. I do understand why some people like it, though. Just dark romance ain't my thing. I needed a bit of a cleanse after that one, so I decided to carry on with the Spellslinger series by Sebastien de Castell. This was specifically book 2, Shadow Black. Now, I have bought the entire series as physicals now, but this was my second audiobook for the month. Once again, this was really, really well narrated by Joe Jameson. And I actually think this is slightly better than book one, largely because of the fact that you actually can clearly see Kellen going through a bit of a growing up thing. Kellen is only 16 in here, very much naive, kind of blind to the world, gets battered early on, as you would expect. But you actually see some real character growth here. And whilst in many ways he's still kind of the least interesting character of the ones that we meet, with Rikis the Squirrel Cat still being very, very much the highlight of this book. You see him more coming into his own with this as he begins to come to terms with his new life and what that looks like, as well as his own limitations and his strengths, as he begins to take his first steps on the journey of being an Argosy. Really interesting dynamic here between Kellen and the people that you meet within this. I feel like the first of the two twists was a little bit expected. One of those characters you look at and think, you're going to be a bad guy. Turned out they were a bad guy. But then it does set up the rest of the series as well. This is just a fun, quick listen. The cover art for these books as well is absolutely stunning, which is why I've now bought them all. So I am going to be continuing with this. I don't know if I'm going to switch to the physical books or carry on listening to the audio. I haven't decided yet. I might hybrid read them. We shall see. But overall, I thought this was pretty good. I gave this 4 stars overall. I do think this is a series I'm going to continue with very, very soon. So that was Shadow Black, Book 2 of the Spellslinger series by Sebastien de Castell. Up next, we have another one of the ARC reads. This releases on February the 1st. This is a queer horror called We Should Not Have Come Here by J.D. Mills. So the Kindle edition comes in at 301 pages, and there is going to be paperback versions of this as well. This follows a group of paranormal reality show investigators, is that what you call them? Frontlined by Ash, who has a bit of a troubled past due to their sexuality and their upbringing and disappearances when they were younger of certain people around them. And they have arrived to investigate Crenshaw Castle, the first shoot of a new series, this former reform school. And it turns out that whilst they don't believe, or at least the majority of the team don't believe in the supernatural, and this is very much a setup for views, they bite off a bit more than can chew here, as it turns out that maybe, just maybe, the supernatural does actually exist. Now, not all the team disbelieve, some actively do, and you have a number of well-defined horror tropes in here. This does have a solid level of tension. The characters are, generally speaking, quite interesting, and they play off each other really, really well. Ash has his own sort of arc through here as he comes to reckon with his own queer age, as he sees himself kind of mirrored in some of the files that they find within this former reformatory school. It does have these odd moments, though, where the characters make decisions that make absolutely zero sense. For example, your best friend just died. Let's phone the police. No, let's carry on filming. That's what they'd want. No, they wouldn't. But you do see a lot of sort of mainstays of horror in here. They're all well executed. I just feel like they've all been done elsewhere before. And whilst they're all put together in an interesting way, this doesn't quite work as well as I would like to, because it's throwing a number of different things together with less focus. I've seen them better elsewhere, where they were a primary focus. Overall, this was a solid read. I gave this a 3.5 stars out of 5. It is well worth checking out if you like your paranormal / Ghost Hunter style horror. Again, releases on February the 1st. I think this was solid. Final arc of the month was Shenandoah Fantastic Mystic Whispers from the Valleys of Vale. So this is a short story collection from a number of authors. This was edited by James Blakey and Catherine Simpson. And this is all set around Shenandoah in the US, which I believe is in Appalachia. This bounces across lots of different subgenres of fantasy and sci-fi. You have dystopias in here, you've had dinosaurs, trolls, witches, you've got some urban fantasy in here as well. You've got some folkloric-esque stuff also. You have suggested time travel. You have some really whimsical, fantastical tales involving beavers and kelpie and things like that. All over the place in terms of types of stories that are in here. And as a result, this is actually quite a hard one to grade. As like with any short story collection, especially one that is written by multiple different authors, your preferences are going to vary quite a lot, and the variance between these stories is vast. Overall, I've given this a 3.5 stars. The stories that didn't work in here for me tended to feel slightly incomplete, like they needed a little bit more time to bake in the oven. Whereas some of them I really, really did like quite a lot. The Train to Mount Jackson I really liked. The Body in the Lake, which is almost like this thriller-esque story, really liked that one as well. Just to name a two. Damn Negotiations was an interesting take on folkloric creatures within the modern age as well. There's a number of really, really good stories in here. If you like fantasy, probably something for you in here. I think it is worth checking out. So this does release on February the 3rd. The Kindle edition came in at 328 pages. As of now, I believe it is only going to be available on Kindle, so something to bear in mind. A solid short story collection, probably something for everyone if you like fantasy in here. That's Shenandoah Fantastic. I gave this 3.5 stars. Last but not least, we have the most recent offering from Calum Lott, who is the author of A Dirge for Cassius, which I reviewed last year, made my top 5 of the year. Link in the description below to go and check that out, and on the card above if I remember to do it. This is Immortal Aberration, which is a novella set within the same universe as Dirge, which is the Valsolis universe, and this is going to be book 1 in the My Mortal Memories series. Whereas Dirge was a character-focused piece punctuated by moments of action, this is very much an action-focused piece punctuated by moments of character focus. This is very action-heavy. This follows a main character of Ludan, who has spent their entire life fighting a secret war to purge the galaxy of forbidden tech, and they discover that there may be a person who knows about this tech on a moon somewhere else in the galaxy. That moon is under the control, however, of the enemies of this group. And the job is to go in, get this scientist, get them out. This is very much a high-stakes extraction mission in hostile enemy territory. And once this properly starts up, this does not give you much room to breathe. This is going from set piece to set piece to set piece, as everything that they've gone in for, all the information they thought they had, proves to be incorrect. And much like it would be in this sort of military operations situation, this is a hostile environment. You are not allowed time to breathe. You're not allowed time to process. And when you do get time to process, it's so quick, so short, and so intense that it only acts as a punctuation for what's going on. And when it does that, it's very much a focus on brotherhood of loss as well. You know, you've got our main character Ludan losing people left, right, and centre around them, some that he's known for a very, very long time, as well as doubts for those around you, as well as the information that they have proves to not be as reliable as they thought. The star of here, though, with this being action focused, is the action scenes. They are incredibly brutal. They're really well realized. They have an aberrant quality to them, which makes sense considering what they're fighting. You have these sort of monstrosities crawling out of various places and spitting acid. It has a real sense of danger there. It has a real kinetic feel as well. And it feels almost inevitable, everything that's going on. Then you thread in the ending of this, which is really, really interesting. It does a great job of building interest to the next entry in the My Mortal Memories series. And also adds another layer of grey to the universe. Although I say grey, it's more another layer of black because this is an incredibly dark setting. But it's got me really, really interested to see where this goes. I've really enjoyed what I've read so far of the Valsolis universe. I do still have Arcoma to read, which I do also have on my Kindle. I'll be checking that out hopefully next month. But overall, I gave this 4 stars out of 5. I do prefer a more focused character piece to an action one. Saying that though, this was a non-stop ride of just gruesome brutality throughout. Really, really enjoyed this one. As for February, then, I only have 2 books that I'm definitely reading in February. The first one is called Bar Hopping for Astronauts, which I have due on February the 21st. That's by Leo X. Robertson. I believe that this is a sci-fi horror short story collection. Looking forward to that one. And then we're going to see if Sarah J. Maas can continue to surprise me after book 2 of the Court series, as I will be reading book 3, A Court of Wings and Ruin, this month, as well as part of the sort of ACOTAR series group read that I'm taking part of. Past those 2, I don't have any set plans for the month, so we shall see what February brings. Thank you so much if you've watched this video this far. Also, let me know in the comments down below what your favourite reader of January was, and also what you're looking forward to in February. I'm always looking for more book recommendations. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all doing well, and I will catch you all very soon.